Right now, Las Vegas is pulling its drinking water through an $800 million tunnel drilled under the bottom of Lake Mead. That tunnel was supposed to be a worst-case backup. It is now the city's main water supply, and the reason it is running is the same reason Hoover Dam is about to lose 12 of its 17 turbines. The lake that feeds both of them is going away. So how does the largest reservoir in the United States reach the point where its emergency systems become the default? It starts with the numbers coming out of the Bureau of Reclamation this month. Lake Mead sat at 1,066 feet on March 1st. By March 21st, it had dropped to 1,064 feet. That is nearly 2 feet in 3 weeks, during a month when snowmelt should be holding the system steady. The reservoir is running 3 feet lower than this exact point last year and 10 feet lower than 2024. Those brief recovery stretches that made headlines 2 years ago have been wiped out. The lake is now at 34% full. It holds roughly 8.75 million acre-feet of water out of a top level of 26 million. And the trend is not leveling off. The Bureau of Reclamation's March 2026 study forecasts Lake Mead reaching 1,032 feet by November 2027. That would crush the July 2022 record low of 1,040 feet by 8 feet. And here's the detail that sets this year's data apart from everything that came before. The March forecast is nearly 4 feet worse than the January forecast. The outlook is not holding steady. It is getting worse month over month. The Snowpack numbers explain why. Water year 2026 natural inflow to Lake Powell, the reservoir that feeds Lake Mead, is expected at 5 million acre-feet. That is 52% of the 30-year average. The key April through July runoff season, when Rocky Mountain snowmelt is supposed to refill the system, is forecast at just 2.4 million acre-feet, or 38% of normal. The snow that should be saving Lake Mead this spring is not there. And all of that is flowing toward a reservoir that supplies water to 40 million people across 7 states and northern Mexico. Colorado River researchers had been sounding the alarm since last fall, warning that the worst case was becoming the most likely case. And every month since then, the forecasts have only gotten worse. Now, the 40 million people number matters, but the most pressing crisis is inside the dam itself. Hoover Dam has 17 main turbines that turn falling water into electricity. The dam's full power rating when the lake is near the top is 2,080 megawatts. At the current level of 1,064 feet, working power has already dropped to roughly 1,300 megawatts. That is a 37% cut from what the dam was built to make. Yearly output has fallen roughly 50% from year 2000 levels, dropping from about 4 billion kilowatt hours to roughly 2 billion. Those 5 turbines still running near full strength are the wide head units that were rebuilt to work at lower water pressure. The other 12 are the original turbines built in the 1930s and 40s. They were built for a lake that stayed between 1,100 and 1,200 feet. At those levels, the weight of the water column pushes through the turbines with enough force to spin them cleanly. Below 1,035 feet, those 12 older turbines face a problem called cavitation. The water pressure drops so low that vapor bubbles form inside the turbine housings and then slam against the metal blades. It tears the equipment apart from the inside. At that point, those 12 turbines must shut down to stop lasting damage. That leaves 5 wide head turbines, making roughly 382 megawatts, an 82% drop from full power. And the federal forecasts say Lake Mead could reach that level by mid-2027. The people who pay for Hoover Dam electricity are spread across 3 states. California gets roughly 56% of the power share, with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California taking the largest single piece at 28.5%. The city of Los Angeles takes 15.4%, Nevada gets 23.4%, and Arizona gets roughly 19%. That electricity reaches about 1.8 million homes. In eastern Nevada, the Lincoln County Power District serves about 5,000 customers spread across 10,000 square miles of rural land. Hoover Dam supplies roughly 70% of the district's power. The concern there is real and growing. The district has been adding extra fees since 2022 to cover the cost of buying replacement electricity on the open market. Tribal utilities, including the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, face the same math. When Hoover's output drops, the replacement power comes from natural gas plants at 2 to 3 times the cost, and rural and tribal communities are the ones who take the hit. Congress stepped in during February 2026 with the Help Hoover Dam Act, which freed roughly $50 million in long-stuck retirement benefit funds for turbine upgrades. The money will go toward wide-head turbine rebuilds, electrical and mechanical upgrades, and long-term system improvements. $50 million is a start, but the dam needs an estimated $200 million in upgrades over the next decade, and replacing the 12 older turbines alone would cost $156 million. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. We cover water systems and geography events like this as they develop. With the full picture, you need to follow what is happening. While the turbine crisis builds inside Hoover Dam, the city sitting 30 miles downstream has been getting ready for this moment for over a decade. And the size of what Las Vegas built is worth knowing about, because it may be the single most important piece of water equipment in the American West right now. The Southern Nevada Water Authority's intake number 3, the one everyone calls the third straw, is a 3-mile-long tunnel cut through solid rock beneath the floor of Lake Mead. The tunnel is 20 to 24 feet across, and it links an underwater intake pipe sitting on the lake bottom to pumping and treatment plants onshore at Saddle Island. The intake sits at roughly 860 feet above sea level. Dead pool for Lake Mead, the level at which water can no longer flow through Hoover Dam at all, is 895 feet. The third straw sits 35 feet below that. Building began in 2008 and took 7 years through brutal conditions, including groundwater floods that over and over again swamped the tunnel boring machine. The tunnel broke through on December 10, 2014, and the system went live in September 2015 at a cost of $817 million. A second project, the Low Lake Level Pumping Station, came online in 2020 and began full work in April 2022, adding its own pumping power down to 875 feet. That station cost another $522 million. Total cost, $1.5 billion. For a system that can pull water from a lake, even if that lake drops below the level where gravity can push it through a dam, the system became needed years ahead of schedule. Intake number 1, built in 1971 at roughly 1,050 feet, broke the water line for the first time in April 2022 when the lake dropped below that mark. It is now useless. Intake number 2, built in 2000 at roughly 1,000 feet, still works but grows more at risk with every foot the lake drops. By 2022, the low-level pump station had taken over as the city's main pump. Roughly 90% of Southern Nevada's water supply comes from the Colorado River through Lake Mead. That is 2.3 million residents and 43 million yearly visitors relying on a single source. Nevada's legal share is just 300,000 acre-feet per year, the smallest piece of any basin state at 1.8% of total flows. You would think that mix, the smallest share and the biggest weak point, would make Las Vegas the city most at risk. Instead, it might be the most ready city on the entire river system. Per-person water use has dropped 55% since 2002, from 222 gallons per day to 89 gallons per day in 2023, even as the metro area added 829,000 people. The water-saving model is built on one simple idea. Every shower, every faucet, every hotel room on the strip, all of that indoor water gets treated, cleaned, and sent back to the lake. The city does not lose what it uses indoors. It returns it. That return flow system is the key. Nearly all indoor water used in Las Vegas is treated, cleaned, and pumped back into Lake Mead through the Las Vegas Wash. Those return flow credits let Nevada stretch its share far beyond 300,000 acre-feet. Nevada reuses 85% of its wastewater, the highest rate of any Colorado River Basin state. So Las Vegas built the tunnel, cut demand in half, and recycled nearly everything. And the lake is still falling. That is what makes the next part of this story so hard. The drought driving Lake Mead's drop is not a weather pattern. It is a deep shift in the water cycle of the American West. The Megadrought that began in 2000 has now lasted over 25 years. Tree ring records going back to 800 AD show that this is the driest 22-year stretch in at least 1,200 years. Research out of UCLA has pinned roughly 42% of the drought's strength directly on human-driven climate change. Without those emissions, the drought would likely have ended around 2005. The Colorado River itself tells the story in plain numbers. Average flows have dropped roughly 20% since 2000 compared to the century before. The 26-year average flow now sits at just 12.2 million acre-feet per year. The problem is that paper shares under the 1922 Colorado River Compact and the 1944 Mexico Treaty add up to 16.5 million acre-feet. That is a gap of 4.3 million acre-feet every single year. The river has been losing more than it gains for a quarter century, and the draws have not stopped. Representatives of 7 states wrote the original compact under Commerce Secretary Herbert Hoover using flow data from an oddly wet stretch. They assumed 16.4 million acre-feet of yearly flow. Tree ring records later showed the real long-term average is closer to 13.5 million. The river was promised to more people than it could ever serve from the day the ink dried. Each added degree Fahrenheit of warming strips another 3 to 5% from Colorado River flow through faster drying and less snowpack. Research out of U Boulder, published in 2025, showed that human emissions are pushing the drought harder and more directly than earlier studies had shown. The conclusion was blunt. This drought is not going away unless temperatures come down. And against that backdrop, 7 states need to agree on new rules for sharing whatever water is left. The current setup, the 2007 interim guidelines and 2019 drought contingency plans, runs out at the end of 2026. A new deal must be locked in by October 1st. So far, the states have failed 3 times to reach one. A first deadline came and went in mid-November 2025. Then a final deadline passed on February 14, 2026. The talks have gone almost nowhere. Years of the same arguments, the same positions, the same refusal to give ground. Nevada's water leadership has been especially direct about the lack of progress, saying the states are stuck repeating the same points to each other with nothing to show for it. The core fight splits along basin lines. Upper basin states, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico, want to guard their shares. Lower basin states, Arizona, California, and Nevada, are fighting over who takes the deepest cuts. Lower basin governors together proposed cuts of 27% for Arizona, 10% for California, and 17% for Nevada. The upper basin has turned down most offers. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum called a first-ever meeting of all 7 governors on January 30th, 2026. California sent stand-ins, instead of the governor showing up in person. The mood was cautiously hopeful, but the gap between the states remained wide. The Bureau of Reclamation put out a draft environmental impact statement on January 9th, looking at 5 management options, but chose not to pick a favored one. Talks picked back up on March 2nd, using Nevada's emergency plan as a starting point, calling for 500,000 acre-feet of emergency releases from Flaming Gorge Reservoir and 1.25 million acre-feet in lower basin cuts. Arizona has made clear that it will not accept a deal where the Central Arizona project bears most of the pain. Colorado has signaled that it will go to court if it has to. And Nevada's position is the sharpest of all. Nevada has a plan, and that plan is built around winning, whether at the table or in front of a judge. The bigger picture is not just about water allocation. The water supply system and the rules that govern it are both under strain. The natural systems that once supported the river, the snowpack, the groundwater, the side streams, many of those broke down years ago. What remains is a set of human agreements trying to divide a resource that is smaller than it was when those agreements were written. Lake Mead sits at 1,064 feet tonight. Federal forecasts say it could reach 1,032 by November of next year. 12 of 17 turbines at Hoover Dam depend on water that may not be there. A $1.5 billion tunnel is keeping Las Vegas alive. And 7 states have until October to decide who gets less of a river that already does not have enough. The deadline is not moving. The water level is.